Hello, and welcome to Basic Folk, a podcast where we have honest conversations with folk musicians. I'm your host, Cindy Howes, and our guest today, Zack Hickman, who is not like your typical folk musician because he is a sideman pretty much exclusively. I've seen him perform solo a couple times, but for the most part, he's playing sideman to people like Josh Ritter, Mark Orelli, those cousins. He's in a bluegrass band called Barnstar. All around, fantastic human being. Also was the music director for Ray LaMontagne for a short while. We're going to get into what exactly we talk about, but first let's thank our sponsors for Basic Folk. Basic Folk is supported by Tina and Her Pony. If you like fresh takes on traditional music, you might like Tina and Her Pony. Follow them on Spotify or at Tina and Her Pony. Zack Hickman is bound to go down in folk history for his incredible handlebar mustache, but fellow bandmates in his numerous groups know him for his extreme talent and keen ability to bring together musical projects like no one else. Born in Lynchburg, Virginia, to physician parents, he grew up on what you might call a micro farm where his family grew produce, flowers, and of course, tended to bees. He eventually found his way to Oberlin College, where he met and started performing with Josh Ritter, who he still performs with today. So Zack's physical appearance is quite memorable. He, of course, has that handlebar mustache. He's over 6 feet tall. And it's interesting to think that his image was born out of a circus he started while in Oberlin College, and we definitely get into that. This is a really fun interview. My favorite part is when Zack gives a rundown of what it's like to play music on television. So Zack Hickman is the person I know in like actual real life who has been on TV the most. That's not like a TV news reporter. It's pretty funny to hear his different experiences in that particular world. This is a great interview. Thanks for checking it out. And I don't have a clip to play of Zack Hickman, but he does, if you are familiar with Josh or Rose Cousins' music or Mark Orelli's music. That is most likely Zack playing the bass. Okay, let's get into our conversation with Zack Hickman. Zack Hickman, thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much for having me.
Is it okay to talk about your whole entire life?
It's okay.
Okay. You just tell me whether or not you want to talk about something or not. But
do we need a safe word or something?
I think the safe word is, and I want to talk about that.
Got it.
It's a safe phrase, actually.
Got it.
So tell me what your childhood was like. You grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia. What was your hometown like?
Well, it's Lynchburg, Virginia. It's a small, like, south central Virginia. That makes it sound like it's tough. It's not. It's like the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. It's not a tiny town. It's like 65,000 people. But pretty small and pretty isolated. There's not another larger city for 70 miles in any direction. It's a very, very conservative, super Christian town. It's the town where Jerry Falwell is from, and Liberty University and the Moral Majority started there. So it's the buckle of the Bible Belt.
The Moral Majority, is that the thing in the 80s?
Yeah,
with Reagan, getting behind Reagan, and then making the Republican Party like the Christian.
That's it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And my parents, they moved there when I was about 6 months old.
Where from?
They were finishing their medical residencies at Duke. I was born on the Duke campus.
Wow.
And then they moved up to Lynchburg, and that was where I grew up the whole time.
And that was because that was from where they got placed?
No, that's after the residency, sort of after the placement.
Oh, okay.
And it was on the short list of cities that had availabilities for both of their practices, I guess. And one day they told me what the other cities were in a disparaging tone, like Seattle, Washington. They were like, too rainy. It's like, I could have grown up in Seattle, but no, I grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia. I grew up in town, but on a like 5-acre vanity farm. My
It's
parents,
a vanity farm.
like a farm for hobby, not
Oh.
for business. So pretty expansive, tons of apple trees and persimmon trees and cherries and pear and
Who is farming?
well, me and my brothers. It's mostly my mom and dad's project, but it was a big project, and so we had to work every weekend for pretty significant hours every weekend.
Wow.
So I was driving a tractor at 10 years old, shoveling snow with the 5 times a year that it snowed 2 inches out of everyone's driveway. Giving hay rides to people. And
Building all sorts of character, I'm
exactly.
sure. Yeah.
So much character.
Do you carry that any of that knowledge about farming into your life now?
Yeah, saying farming that's really a little strong. It's
Gardening?
It's gardening, but it's like big gardening.
Yeah.
I would like to say no, because that experience made me hate working with the gardens. Mm-hmm. But I did just spend 4 days like clearing brush this week. So I guess some experience. I know how to drive a tractor and drive a dump truck and, use a manure fork and move brush piles. It's in there somewhere.
That's great. What kind of kid were you growing up?
I was sort of the token awkward middle child. I was kind of a emotional big kid.
Like sensitive?
I was sensitive. Yeah, I think so. I say big. I hit puberty much earlier than the other people in my grades, like the 4th grade.
Wow.
So I was this height in the 6th grade.
Wow.
12, which I think influenced some of my instrument choices.
Yeah.
Because I was just a big kid. But I wasn't an especially musical kid, not by any stretch. My parents started me on Suzuki piano lessons at a super young age. I remember it as before I was 3 years old. That might not be accurate.
Wow.
But
So can you just quickly explain Suzuki?
yeah. The Suzuki method of teaching very young, it's designed. It's a Japanese person named Suzuki, and it was his method for teaching young children, getting them to learn by ear before they were reading music, which at the time seemed like a pretty radical idea. But it was learning by ear and being able to play, and then introducing the written music as you go. So many of the musicians I play with, I realize now, had like some degree of Suzuki training.
How can you tell?
Well, I don't know if you can really tell necessarily, or a lot of the improvising musicians that I know that are comfortable as improvisers, that seems to be a pretty common through line. But I was a piano playing kid, and I was unremarkable at best. I wasn't terrible. I wasn't a prodigy or exceptional. I could play Ecosace and do my lessons, but I never got super good.
Wait, what was the word?
Ecosace. It's like one of the early Bach dances that you learn to play. You could recognize it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Little kid piano music that you learn
With 2 hands?
Yeah.
2 hands.
But I never really got. I could never really read grand staff like piano music. It's treble and bass clef.
Going along at the same time.
Instead, I would watch my teacher's hands and pretend that I was reading the music, and just if I made a mistake, I'd fix it by ear, and then I'd remember the patterns. But I never really read the music.
Oh, that's one way to do it.
Yeah, it's total just faking my way out of piano lessons, basically. Not that I couldn't read the notes, but some people, it still amazes me. Like, I just don't know how the human brain reads grand staff in real time. like that. I feel like it's reading up, left to right, and up and down at the same time. It doesn't make sense to me. Never has.
Yeah.
But I know what all the notes are. I read music great, but at some point, you either need to actually read music well, or you need to maybe step away from the piano.
So were you listening to any music when you were a kid?
No. I feel like it makes my story a little different than most of my friends. But we kept a tape recorder that I would put on and play Bach while we were going to sleep as kids. Piano lessons were for synapse development. That was
like for brain.
Yeah, it was a cognitive plan that
Did it work?
Well, it backfired terribly, didn't it? It just wasn't a house. We didn't have a stereo. We don't listen. Just didn't listen to music.
Your parents read it in a book or learned it in one of their classes, and they were like, "Oh, well, let's."
Yeah, let's try that. That's a good thing to do.
How many siblings do you have?
A brother on either side. Older brother,
Did
younger
they
brother.
also play piano?
My older brother didn't. Frank.
How'd he get
didn't.
out of that?
I think they were figuring it out.
Oh.
And then my little brother and I both did. It just wasn't a house people where you put on records and dance around in the kitchen.
My house either.
Yeah.
It's funny because my parents had a bunch of records and tapes. They would never put anything on. The only thing I remember is that Boney M. Christmas album.
Wow.
Being played at Christmas.
Yeah.
And then Johnny Cash in the car, his greatest hits or something.
Yeah. I feel like all we listened to was Car Talk and Prairie Home Companion.
Do your parents listen to music now?
More than they did. Certainly.
Right. Yeah, mine don't really either. Mine listen to the music that I like.
Yeah.
They listen to me.
my mom has a larger me collection than I do. That's for sure.
Although I will say, because I know my mom is listening to this podcast, I will say that my dad is a stellar accordion player.
Right.
And it is the dream to get you and him jamming one day.
I feel like 2019 is the year. It's the year it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm back in Boston.
Yep.
It's all coming together. What about your parents were not into music. They're physicians. They seem like very smart, straight-laced folk. What were they like as parents?
They were great parents. We were pretty independent kids,
Working the cherry farm.
Well, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
And when I got a little older, my father raised bees.
Of course.
So we had a full-on apiary at the house. And that was really a pretty fun chapter.
Where did this interest in kind of micro farming come from for your parents?
It seemed to be something that my dad was into all along, even from a pretty younger age. They both liked the science of it. They know the Latin names for all the trees and all the plants, and to this day, my mom, Dr. Janet Hickman, is the world U.S. daffodil champion.
Wow.
She raises daffodils now that we're all out of the house, and this is her high season, so every weekend she's away adjudicating garden contests. It's really pretty crazy. But yeah, there were bees, and then when they would make honey, and then you'd give all the honey away, and that was pretty fun because on a good year you'd get a remarkable amount of honey, 40 gallons or something.
Wow.
And everyone I know still has a little bit in their closet. My dad doesn't have the hives anymore, but there's the little bully bee apiary. The drawing my little brother did. It's awesome.
Oh, wow. Okay, going back to music.
Yeah.
I read that you taught yourself music theory.
Yeah.
How did that happen, and when did you realize that it was theory?
Well, I feel like I didn't really realize I had any real aptitude for music until the 6th grade. When I was 12 years old, I guess. I started playing in the middle school band, beginner band. And in the 5th grade, some kid had told me, we were joking around, he basically bet me that I wouldn't play the tuba. And I was like, yeah, I will. And then I walk into the first day of middle school, and I'm a 6 foot tall 6th grader. And they need tuba players. Nobody wants to play the tuba. So they handed me a tuba, and I was pretty good. I got good pretty quickly. I mean, good is relative, I guess, but enough that by the 7th grade, they had me playing with the high school marching band.
Ooh.
And the middle school band director would drive me from the middle school every day to the high school to play tuba in the marching band. They didn't have enough tuba players. I looked like a high school kid. So I started doing that in 7th grade. I might be the only person that played in a high school marching band for 6 years.
Wow. What does that get you in life?
Well, here I am, living the dream.
Oh my God, that's so true.
But it was around that time, kids start getting guitars, and this kid in my class told me that he was starting a band, and I was the bass player. And I said, "Sounds really cool." And I went to the school library to look up what the bass is, because I had no idea. I don't know what that is. So I was asking my mom about a bass, and she stalled for many, many months. So I had a little tiny Casio keyboard, and our band practice was him with a guitar and me playing notes on the keyboard, and just, I don't know what I'm doing. It was the worst band the world's ever heard. But I spent a lot of time that summer with this terrible little keyboard, just playing around on it. And music theory is such a scary sort of word. It's a word that people use to divide themselves from other kinds of musicians. Like, I never learned theory, so it's wrong. It's kind of a simplistic, silly way to think about it. Music theory is just the relationships between notes and how those can be used in different ways. So if you spend enough time playing around on a piano, and you're in the key of C, and you play a C chord and an F chord and a G chord and a C chord, that has a very familiar sound. And if you start on a different chord, you start on an E chord, but you count the same number of notes. You count to 4, you count to 5. It'll have the same relationship, but it'll be in a whole different key. And I felt like I could start to see through music a little bit.
Cracking the code.
Yeah, I was cracking the code. I pretend that it's not the case, but I come from like a family of scientists. My older brother is a computer scientist, and I think I had an aptitude for the math of the music, but I didn't know what any of the names were. Like, where if you play from C to C on a piano, and then you play from D to D on a piano, but still only the white notes, it has a totally different sound. And then if you play from E to E using only the white notes, it has a totally different sound. And you're like, those are cool. Those are called modes. Those are like the scary modes that everyone is afraid of. That's the Dorian mode and the Phrygian mode and the Lydian. And I was learning to hear those patterns in sound before I knew what the names of them were. And
then did you learn about those eventually at Oberlin?
Oh, I learned about them much earlier. I and my mom, we managed to bully the high school to start an AP music theory program for me in the 9th grade.
You're like, I've been playing tuba for you guys for 6 years.
Totally. The band teacher at the high school, he didn't want to suddenly have to teach an extra AP class. So it was just me and one senior trumpet player. It was basically just reading about music theory in the first period every day. But I felt like I knew a lot of it. I just figured it out. So now I just had to learn the names. And it was easy. Got a 5 on the AP music theory. And it's like understanding the grammar of music. You just need, each instrument is a different language, but you understand the structure. You understand how it was put together. And once you fill in the details, it's a lot easier.
Is that kind of how your mind works in general when approaching a problem?
I guess so, yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Or problems seem less problematic when you divide them into variables that you understand and have control over and variables that you don't. Well, then you don't have to worry about the whole problem. You worry about the things that you don't have as much control over, and that's a lot less. That's not that scary. I think it's in there. in most facets of my life, I seem like I have a tendency towards structure and kind of organizing things, which I'm in the wrong business for that, you know. That's
Yeah. Well, you've come to use those skills pretty well, I think. Well, before we go any further, what did the high school do after you graduated for a tuba player? Do you still go back and play tuba?
I haven't gone back. Both of the band directors that were influential left when I left.
They're like, we're done.
Of course, we're done. But in those 6 years, they went from like a 2 tubas to like a 320-person marching band with like an 8-person tuba section.
Wow.
I got us all matching hats and dance
course you did.
moves. We were about as cool as a high school marching band tuba section can be.
My God.
Which is to say, not very.
Really can't wait to get you and my dad together.
But my last year in the marching band, I was the drum major, which is the person that stands in front of the conductor, the person that stands in front of the marching band and conducts. So I was the leader of the marching band my senior year of high school, which means I didn't play the tuba. But our show that year was the music from the movie Braveheart, and they needed someone to learn how to play the bagpipes in a couple of weeks.
Who stepped up?
I stepped up.
Wow.
So I would conduct the band and then run off my podium and run over to the percussion section and put on my bagpipes and then honk the bagpipes for a while and then put that down and then run back up on the podium and finish the show. It's really, really funny.
Wow. I'm just like, there's so many things about you that are making so much sense as we speak. You are in a group of musicians in Boston who often will, in the middle of a song, will just get up, move to another instrument, start playing it, play it for a little while, get up, go to another instrument.
Totally.
It started early.
I think so.
You studied jazz performance and composition there. Where did the interest in jazz come from?
Jazz was just, it was a good, I mean, I didn't grow up listening to jazz, but it combined the upright bass and being challenged musically. And it's just kind of where I ended up there. So I auditioned for a bunch of schools. I auditioned for Oberlin, got a scholarship, and I went there as a double bachelor degree program, jazz performance.
In composition.
And in an English degree, actually.
Oh, all right.
The composition is just, as part of
the performance.
Part of the major, yeah.
Is there a way to like sum up your experience at Oberlin? Like how did you fit in there?
It was a great time. I did a bunch of stuff at Oberlin that I probably wouldn't have had a chance to do anywhere else. I was at Oberlin that I did my circus for my senior project. It wasn't a senior project. There is no senior project requirement. I just decided I didn't want to do a normal senior jazz recital. So I put on a 65-person circus with like a 12-piece band and all full original score and an animal act and trapeze. And it took 7 months.
Wow.
I built all the circus wagons myself, put on a big show. And now it's like a part of the curriculum at Oberlin College, which is really cool.
Wow.
And
to make a circus?
Yeah, now there's like a circus major at Oberlin.
Wow.
Yeah, there's the O Circus program. And I don't have any circus talents, but it's where I grew my first big curly mustache for the circus.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I would just walk around and I'd go to parties late at night when people were already very drunk and I wasn't yet. And asked people if they could do any tricks and collected a bunch of names and put together a crazy circus of weirdos. And it was great fun. So yeah, in Oberlin, I also got to meet musicians and start to make records. And the first record I made as a college student was with Josh Ritter, my freshman year when I was 18 years old, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, how did you guys meet?
We were kind of placed together. There was a play was being put on, and they wanted to record an original score for the play. And they needed people, and it was sort of like a country-themed soundtrack, and I was the only bass player from the South. So they kind of just assumed that I could play country music. And they asked me if I'd do it, and they
And
said...
Oberlin is in Ohio,
Yeah,
right?
it's like next to Cleveland.
Yeah.
So they asked me if I would play, and I said sure, and they said great, we'll let you know when. And then one night, I'm like ready to go to sleep at like 10 o'clock, and I get a phone call in the dorm. And they're like, where are you? We're recording the record all night tonight. Josh's job was to call me and let me know, and he did not. So I was very late, and I went to a recording session at about 11 p.m. till 4 or 5 in the morning, and we recorded a soundtrack, which is hilarious. I still have it. It has its moments. So we were kind of put together with that, and then Josh is a couple years older than I am, and his senior year was my sophomore year, and he wanted to record his first debut record. So they asked me to play on it, and again, the only time the recording studio was available was from like midnight to 10 a.m. on a Sunday. So we made most of that record in one long night, very strange night. And then he graduated, then I had a couple more years.
And when did you come back to playing with him? Did you continue to play with him after he graduated?
Yeah. Josh would come back to Oberlin. He was very popular. He was a very popular performer on like student campus and the student coffee house and the folk music club. And so I would play with him. In those days, it was simpler times. It was very cute. Play upright bass with a harmonica rack, and play harmonica solos, and play the bass at the same time.
Was it the two of you?
And Darius, his manager, was playing drums.
Yeah.
And at least maybe on 2 like spring or fall breaks, I drove out east where Josh was living, and we would play shows like around my like college availability. That was the first time I came to Boston, and the first time I played at Club Passim.
And you moved here eventually because Josh was here?
It was one of the factors. Yeah, it wasn't all of it, but it was one of the factors that kind of helped me narrow down the void.
How long have you been playing with Josh at this point?
22 years.
Oof. Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
So, you and Sam Kassir plays keyboard and whatnot. The two of you, the last time all three of us were together, I really noticed how funny the two of you are. And I mean, that's something that I've known, but it really like struck me of like what great chemistry you have in terms of like comedic timing. It was just hilarious listening to you talk. And I wonder if there's ever an opportunity for you guys to show that side of your personality on stage while not upstaging Josh.
Yeah, interesting.
Because Josh definitely has like, I don't know, in terms of like a songwriter who's also very funny, I think it's a very nuanced and hard skill to develop, putting your sense of humor into your songwriting. But what is it like when you're backing somebody up on stage and you're funny?
It's a great question. I do think Sam and I we have good chemistry.
It's amazing.
And we've known each other almost as long as Josh and I. Like, I got Sam into the Josh Ritter band when
he was like the young man.
He was the young man. He was still in college. You know, he barely graduated college because we kept bringing him on the road. So it's, that's 18 years. You know, it's been a long time. But I think Sam and I both agree that it's Josh's show, right? Or it's the band leader's show. It's very, very rare that I'm going to talk on the microphone during a Josh show, unless I am, like, asked a question on stage, which has happened, but very rarely, you know. Seeing shows where, like, the band members are, like, making funny comments on the mic, is it ever really that funny, or is it mostly just funny for the people in the band, you know?
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know that that's really our job. But I do think that we can have real distinct personalities without like telling jokes, you know?
It's got to be real subtle.
Well, I guess it's subtle. It doesn't feel that subtle, you know? And like, you know, musically, there's a lot of entertain yourself, entertain the room, also entertain the other guys on stage. And some of that is like musically playful or playful. Yeah, a little tongue-in-cheek sometimes. It hasn't happened in a while, but Sam and I do have a duo band called Sack and Zam, which is accordion and tuba songs that we perform together.
The two most
with
beautiful
matching shirts. We haven't done a Sack and Zam in a while, but it's pretty good show.
I think we're due. You have been on TV numerous times. You might be the person I know in life that has been on television the most, that is not like a TV news reporter. Can you talk about what that experience is like to be on TV? Like, is there a set routine every time?
Yeah. No is the answer to that. All of the shows that I've done they're different. You know, they have their quirks. The show that I've done the most is David Letterman, and I guess I've done Letterman 6 times.
Wow.
5 times, 6 times.
Is it all with Josh?
No, with Ray LaMontagne also. That show is it's very funny because you have to load in very early in the morning, incredibly early, like 5:15 or something.
Wow.
Or the first time that we played Letterman was before we had like guitar tech and people to help us, so you know we're there early. And then you sound check, and then all your stuff is on rolly carts, and then they roll it all off. And then you have to go upstairs in a tiny room about the size of this and wait all day. You know, then you go in, you do hair and makeup one at a time, and it's the same. You know, they laugh they think my mustache is cool. They look at my hair and they say, "I guess we're good here because there's not a lot to do." You know,
And your mustache is already waxed up.
Mustache is already waxed, and then I get lots of foundation for my shiny 5 head. Right, lots and lots of shiny de-shiner. But then when it's ready to go, they film Letterman just like the running order on TV. So the changeover from haven't touched your instrument in 8 hours to get on stage and play is 90 seconds. And it's absolutely crazy. So they go to commercial, and then whatever staging is in the way gets pulled away, and all of our instruments get rolled back out on carts and stopped, and you have to plug in and make sure that everything's cool, and inevitably something isn't cool, and you got to figure out why. And then they're like, they give you the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They go to Letterman, and then they cut back to you. You're supposed to like look cool and comfortable. Like it's not comfortable, you know. It's also freezing cold.
I heard that.
Yeah, so cold.
Like 50 degrees.
Like no, it's I think it's like 57 degrees in there.
Wow.
It's chilly, you know.
Oh yeah.
And then you go and you play your 4-minute song. No, you don't. You play your 3-minute song, and then you're done. And
Just one time.
Just one time, unless you make a colossal mistake, which has only happened one time to me, and then you can do a redo. I don't want to talk about that.
Okay. That's totally fine.
But yeah, it's a crazy experience, and some of the shows are different. I think definitely the most fun TV thing I've ever done was the Jules Holland show on the BBC in London. Later with Jules Holland.
That seems pretty fun.
Super fun because it's only bands that are. There's no like other acts. There's no like actors or politicians. It's just different bands in a circle. And the time that we played it Bela Fleck was there, and the Who.
Sure.
So we were on Jules Holland with the Who.
Wow.
And
you opened for the Who.
I played with the Who.
Wow.
Because when they do like the opening thing where they play like the like theme song, Pino Palladino, was in the bathroom, so I played bass with the Who.
Oh,
It happened in real life.
that's cool.
And that was super fun. We had a big horn section, and if I look at the taping, they cut to like over Pete Townsend's shoulder, and he's like holding his guitar and watching us play and nodding his head, and it was really fun.
That's a moment for sure.
That was a great one.
You have this story of first arriving in Boston and going to the Cantab Lounge, sitting in on Bluegrass Night, which is a thing that's been happening for hundreds of years at this point. But what I loved about the story is that immediately afterwards, and correct me if I'm wrong, people came up to you and just were handing you business cards to come play with them. Why do you think people are so drawn to you to be their sideman?
I think in a best case scenario, what I bring to the table is competency. Like I'm a quick study and I'm good at my instrument, but I make the people I'm performing with feel more comfortable. That's gotten me more work than probably anything else. If an artist is nervous or uncomfortable, I can usually make it better. You know?
Does that translate to life?
Not as well as I wish it did.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes.
That'd be a real good skill to have it on both ways.
With Ray LaMontagne, that was a part of it. Like, he can be sort of an anxious performer. When I play with Ray, I wouldn't look at the audience. I would just look at Ray for 2 hours. And anytime he'd open his eyes, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, I gotcha. Like,
did he like that?
Yeah, very much. Well, it's just someone's looking out for you on stage. Stage is scary. It's vulnerable and strange, and it's hot and loud. And there's somebody, you turn to your left, and there's somebody that's got your back at all times. I like to think that that's a good feeling. In a lot of ways, I feel like a lot of my job is it's easier than I don't have to sing. I don't have to remember all these verses. Like, so I have extra bandwidth, and so I can give you as an artist a ton of attention and make you feel like you are being taken care of, you are being looked after.
So present.
That's why I really try to be.
Yeah.
I think that's helped, when I first moved to town, I think there were very few young bluegrass musicians in town. It wasn't like it is these days. There were fewer of us. And I had been, also while I was in college, I started to play music with Chris Eldridge from the Punch Brothers. So I was, he's a number of years younger, but we had a band for a year and played a lot of bluegrass.
Is that Stable Horse?
Yeah, I'm a stable horse, eventually. So I was really into bluegrass when I moved to town. It was a nice time, early 2000s, for bluegrass. And a banjo player named Chris Pandolfi moved to town on the same day, who's now in the infamous String Dusters. And we sat in at the same time at the Cantab. And we're like, you're great. And then a bunch of people were like, we need great people. So we both started working right away. I never had to get a job. I just moved to Boston and started working. That's
awesome. So would you say Stable Horse was a precursor to the infamous String Dusters?
Yeah, definitely. Stable Horse was the first time I had a vision for a band, and I decided I was gonna, at my own personal expense, like, make a band. So I knew Andy Hall on dobro, I knew Chris Pandolfi on banjo, and I knew Chris Eldridge on guitar. And none of those guys had met each other. So I bought Chris Eldridge a ticket to fly from Cleveland, which when you're 22 years old is a real commitment. So Critter flew in on a Friday. We hung out at my house. We learned some songs. Saturday morning we learned some songs. Saturday afternoon, we played the Plow and Stars. Sunday morning, we drove to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and we made a record. And then we flew Critter home that night. And
It's a crazy weekend.
it's a crazy
in New
weekend.
England.
I can't imagine pulling something like that off. Also, like, because you got to stay up real late, and you got to get real drunk, and you got to eat Kelly's roast beef at 2 a.m.
Of course. Well, it sounds like those Josh Ritter recording experience in a way.
Totally. There's a through line there.
Parallels.
But yeah, so I made Stable Horse. We performed some. We toured a little bit, and then it was they decided to move as a group to Nashville, and I kind of had to decide if I was going to move to Nashville and stick with Stable Horse, or if I was going to keep playing with Josh Ritter. So I kept playing with Josh, and they changed the name of the band and became the String Dusters in Nashville.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's wild.
it's one of my specialties is naming bands, starting bands, and then basically getting kicked out of my own band. I've got a few of those.
I do want to know about your instrument spreadsheet.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about it. How many? You don't know how many instruments you own?
Well, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me.
Oh, okay. But it's like as many that you just don't have it in your mind.
Well, I like to collect instruments. I love being able to play lots of different instruments. And some of them I'm pretty good at, and some of them I'm just really not that good at. But I'm better than you are because I own it. You don't, you know? I think that's awesome. Especially in the 2000s, I had a little bit of an eBay problem and would wind up with a lot of things. Yeah. But I started keeping an Excel document for taxes, and then because I loan people a lot of stuff. I like having extras and redundancy. And then
a lot of jumpsuits.
A lot of jumpsuits, a lot of pump organs, a lot of bass amps, you know. I like having all these, and then, so I need to write down sometimes who has what, because I would forget. And then you might as well list them in alphabetical order.
Sure. And
then alphabetical order on a spreadsheet, you've got a number, and then you start to realize, like, wow. It's like you're scrolling from page to page of your own instrument list. Like, there's a lot going on here. Somewhere between 70 and 80, I think, like different instruments.
Wow. That's
if you count like harmonicas as one instrument and not like 15 different harmonicas, you know. But I also own instruments I haven't seen in years and years, you know. I own a valve trombone. I think it's in Dietrich Strauss's closet, but
let's go get it.
I definitely haven't seen it since like 2012. You know, I don't know if it's still there.
Can you tell me about my favorite instrument of yours? Can you guess which one it is?
I'm going to guess it's Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster sousaphone.
Yes.
Yes. I play the tuba. Tubas are very expensive. Like, when you leave high school, you no longer have a tuba because the high school owned it.
Oh, it's that expensive.
Yeah, no, they start at like $4,000. They're too much, you know. They're pricey. So I was on tour. I was in Scotland, coincidentally. I was on the Shetland Islands, and it was my birthday. It's a crazy place to have a birthday, and I think I was turning. No, I wasn't 30. I was younger than 30. No, I think I might have been turning 30 years old. I'm at the end of the world in the middle of the North Atlantic. I'm lonely. I'm on tour, and I got the laptop out, and I think I'm looking for sousaphones and tubas on eBay, and I think I typed in weird sousaphone or something like that. This instrument comes up that a crazy person made in Ohio, like a total crazy person, whose two passions are marching band and fiberglass jet boat repair. And he took a collegiate Holton sousaphone, which is a fiberglass shell.
The white one?
The white ones, yeah, those weird white ones. They don't sound super good, but they're light. And he turned it into the Loch Ness Monster and put fins, like fabricated, delicate, steel reinforced fins.
Beautiful.
And scales, all the whole thing's covered in like painted scales, fire in the bell. And it's late at night. We've been drinking 50-year-old scotch. And I was like, it's my birthday. I deserve this. So I was determined to win the bid. Nobody bid on it. I won it by a long shot.
Wow.
And I felt sort of bad because I won it for way less money than the tuba by itself would have cost. But then I contacted him, I need to get it shipped from Ohio, and it's huge, and it doesn't fit into a case anymore because it's got giant fins on it.
Right.
So this crazy person has to make me a case and then put it on a Greyhound bus, and I have to go to the bus depot.
Buy a ticket for this.
Pick it up. Yeah. I get there and I'm looking around and I don't know where to start. And this one guy comes over to me and goes, "Are you the Loch Ness Monster guy?" I'm like, what does that mean? He had painted "Danger, Loch Ness Monster" on the case, which is a crazy thing with no context. You're like, what do you mean? There's like a 60-pound, like 6 square foot case that says "Danger, Loch Ness Monster." It's hilarious. I brought it home. Rachel Davis was in town that day. She happened to come by the same day I got my tuba for the first time, and we put a couple of videos that are still up online. They're terrible. Like, I can't stop laughing. So I'm trying to play the sousaphone. It's Nessie. It's amazing.
It's so good.
It's the best instrument I've ever seen.
I think some of my earliest YouTube videos are of Barnstar like playing Nessie in the Cantab, made on a flip phone.
I think you're right.
It's so good. Oh man, this has been so great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. All right, thanks, Zach. All right, I forgot to do the lightning round with Zach, which is too bad because he would have been fantastic at it. So let's just thank our sponsors for Basic Folk. Basic Folk is brought to you in part by Winterbirds. Their new album, Shaker Songs, takes 18th and 19th century sacred texts from American Shakers and puts it to all new progressive bluegrass compositions, exploring the poetry of this unique community. You can find Shaker Songs by Winterbirds on Bandcamp. And thanks to WIUP in Indiana, Pennsylvania, which airs Basic Folk 2 p.m. Eastern every Saturday. You can listen on 90.1 if you're in the Indiana, PA area, or at their website, wiupfm.org. Basic Folk is produced by Laura McCarthy. Lindsay Myers is our business manager. Alex Stanton of Townspeople does our music. I'm Cindy Howes, and you can find show notes at cindyhowes.net. That's also where you can sign up for my newsletter, which I sometimes send out and let you know what's going on. There's also a Facebook group you can join, Basic Folk Basics. Stop by, say hi, and hope everyone is just having a really wonderful day. Okay, thanks so much for listening. Bye.